You check your phone. Nothing. Just a blank screen and that cold, heavy weight settling in your chest. You walk through the crowds, surrounded by the endless, superficial noise of American society, and you feel completely alien, like a deep-sea diver in a world of wading pools. Society tells you that this silence is a symptom. They diagnose your isolation. They whisper that you are broken, that having no friends means you are the problem. But they are wrong. What if I told you that your solitude is not a defect, but a highly evolved defense mechanism? What if you are not lonely, but simply wired to reject the artificial? Look around you. Modern society operates on a singular, desperate mandate: blend in at all costs. In America, the culture of relentless networking is shoved down your throat as the ultimate metric of human value. Collect contacts, hand out business cards, force a smile at people you despise, just to climb a corporate ladder built on sand. They call it being outgoing. They call it building your tribe. It is not a tribe, it is a herd. And the herd is absolutely terrified of anyone who does not need it to survive. The sheepherds huddle together for warmth. They find their pathetic safety in numbers, bleating the exact same opinions, laughing at the exact same hollow jokes, desperate to convince themselves they matter. But the tiger walks alone. Not because it is broken, not because it is incapable of interaction, but because it is an apex predator and it has absolutely no use for the herd. You are not meant to graze. When you sit alone, society demands that you feel pathological guilt. They label your silence as antisocial. They desperately try to pathologize your independence because your self-sufficiency holds up a mirror to their own profound emptiness. But let us look at the cold, evolutionary truth. Your solitude is not a psychological defect. It is the pinnacle of human evolution. You have evolved past the primitive, tribal need for constant, mindless validation. You have broken free from the social entropy that drags the masses down into a swamp of absolute mediocrity. While they are busy exchanging meaningless pleasantries just to sedate their deep-seated insecurities, you are observing. You are calibrating. They drain their life force trying to fit into tiny boxes built for the average mind. You refuse to shrink yourself to fit into a space you have already outgrown. Having few or no friends is not a failure of your socialization. It is a rigorous, subconscious filtering mechanism. Your brain simply rejects the poison of inauthenticity. You are holding out for a caliber of connection that the majority of the population cannot even comprehend, let alone provide. Stop apologizing for your isolation. Stop feeling guilty for refusing to play a rigged, exhausting game. You are not a social outcast. You are simply operating on a level they cannot reach. Trait 1. Hyperacute pattern recognition. Let us look at evolutionary psychology. There is a cognitive mechanism known as thin slicing. It is the ability of the human brain to find accurate patterns in events based only on incredibly narrow windows of experience. The average person does this poorly. They rely heavily on rehearsed social scripts and polite fictions. They take reality at face value. You do not. You cannot. Your nervous system is weaponized for truth. Have you ever walked into a room, met someone for exactly 3 seconds, and felt an immediate, visceral repulsion? While everyone else in the group is completely charmed by their practiced smile, your brain is already operating in overdrive. You are not just observing the interaction, you are dissecting it. They hear the polite words being spoken. You analyze the micro-tension in the jaw. They see a friendly, welcoming handshake. You calculate the unnatural rigidness of the posture. They blindly accept the flattery. You instantly detect the hidden agenda dripping from the inflection of their voice. It is comfortable to be blind. It is easy to accept the masks people wear every single day, but your psyche absolutely refuses to play along with the theater. You instantly recognize the glaring contradictions between what people project and what their subconscious inevitably leaks out. When someone approaches you with a carefully manufactured personality, the average person welcomes them with open arms. Your internal alarm bells deafen you. This is exactly why small talk physically exhausts you. You are never just exchanging meaningless words about the weekend. You are actively processing a massive, invisible mountain of psychological data. You are constantly filtering out the lies, the masked insecurities, and the desperate, quiet attempts at validation. Society immediately labels this trait as being overly critical. They call you guarded, cynical, or cold. They tell you that you have severe trust issues. Let them think exactly that. What they desperately call paranoia, the apex mind recognizes as necessary hypervigilance. You do not have an inability to connect with other human beings. You have an absolute intolerance for the artificial. You demand raw authenticity in a society that literally survives on camouflage. When a social connection fails to form, it is never because you are socially inept. It is because your mind ran an instantaneous background check on their soul and simply denied them clearance. Think about the people who have walked out of your life. Think about the superficial connections that simply faded to black. The herd firmly believes you push people away. But look closer. Look at the data. You simply stopped pretending their masks were real. You aren't lonely. You are just incapable of being lied to. So ask yourself, did you lose them or did you expose them? Trait 2. The depth addict. Have you ever been at a dinner party listening to the person next to you drone on about the weather or the latest sports scores and felt a physical exhaustion set in? You smile politely, but it's a mask. It's a performance. You are a deep-sea diver in a world of wading pools. Most people are terrified of the deep end. They prefer the shallow, sunlit surface where everything is safe, predictable, and utterly meaningless. They thrive on social entropy, the gradual decline into mindless noise. You, however, crave substance. You are addicted to the why and the how, while they are stuck on the who and the what. This creates a visceral friction in your social life. Think about that awkward silence that descends when you try to steer a conversation toward philosophy, the nature of reality, or the darker corners of the human psyche. You see the subtle shift in their eyes, a flicker of discomfort, a desperate look for an exit strategy. They don't want to think, they want to be distracted. They hear words and seek comfort. You hear words and seek truth. This is why you feel like an alien in your own city. You are operating on a frequency that is simply too dense for the average receiver to pick up. In psychology, we call this a preference for high-complexity stimuli. Your brain is a nuclear engine trying to run on AA batteries provided by a superficial culture. When you engage in small talk, you aren't just bored, you are being starved. You are looking for a soul-to-soul connection in a landscape of cardboard cutouts. They call you too intense. They say you overthink everything. They are wrong. You don't overthink. You simply think at a depth they find threatening. Your solitude is not a lack of social skill. It is a refusal to drown in the mundane. You aren't lonely. You are just waiting for someone who isn't afraid of the pressure at the bottom of the ocean. Have you ever walked into a room and felt someone dislike you immediately? You haven't said a word. You haven't made a gesture. Yet, the air thickens with their unprovoked hostility. You feel their eyes tracking you with a strange, bitter resentment. Most people in your position would feel hurt. They would scramble to be liked, offering smiles and explanations to soothe the tension. But let's go darker. This is trait 3, the mirror effect. You are not being hated for your flaws. You are being hated for your clarity. In analytical psychology, Carl Jung spoke of the shadow, the repressed, dark side of the personality that individuals refuse to acknowledge. Most people spend their entire lives constructing an elaborate mask of confidence to hide their deep-seated insecurities. Then you walk in. You don't play the game. You don't mirror their false enthusiasm or validate their curated personas. Because you are comfortable in your own silence, you become a mirror, a high-definition, unforgiving mirror that reflects their own inauthenticity back at them. When they look at you, they don't see you. They see the part of themselves they have spent years trying to suppress. Your very existence is an indictment of their pretense. They hear words, you embody presence. They seek distraction, you possess focus. They need the herd to feel powerful. You are powerful because you are alone. This creates a psychological phenomenon where your stillness is perceived as an attack. Your lack of a mask triggers their survival instincts. They must label you as the villain, the arrogant one, or the weirdo, because the alternative is too painful, admitting that they are living a lie. If you have been ostracized or met with cold shoulders for no apparent reason, understand this. Being the villain in a loser's story is a compliment. Their discomfort is the ultimate proof of your strength. You are not a social failure. You are a biological anomaly that exposes the frailty of the herd. They don't hate you, they hate the mirror. And you? You shouldn't care. It is much safer to be respected by the few than liked by the fraudulent. Let them keep their masks. You keep your soul. Trait 4. High social entropy. Have you ever noticed that an hour of socializing leaves you feeling like you've just run a marathon in a storm? You aren't just tired, you are depleted. This isn't a personality flaw, it is physics. In thermodynamics, entropy is the measure of disorder and energy loss within a system. When you interact with people who exist on a lower vibrational frequency, those obsessed with the mundane and the superficial, you experience social entropy at an accelerated rate. Most people are like external combustion engines. They require constant outside fuel attention, validation, noise just to keep moving. They feed off the crowd. You are a nuclear engine. You are self-sustaining, but your internal core is highly sensitive to interference. While the average person finds comfort in a noisy construction site of social interaction, you are building a skyscraper in your mind. Every useless question, every fake laugh, every shallow comment is a wrecking ball hitting your structure. It is exhausting. You don't want to be there. You can't be there. Neuroscience calls this the default mode network, the part of the brain that is active when you are at rest, reflecting and self-referencing. In elite minds, this network is hyperactive. When you are forced into a low-level social script, you are essentially asking a supercomputer to run a child's calculator game. It generates massive heat and zero output. This is why you choose solitude. You aren't recharging to go back out. You are preserving your energy for things that actually matter. They say you are missing out. They say you are too quiet. They don't understand that your silence is a conservation of power. Why waste your limited, high-grade fuel on an external combustion society? Every second you spend in a meaningless crowd is energy stolen from your own greatness. You don't have a social battery problem. You have a high-performance system that refuses to waste its power on low-value targets. You aren't antisocial. You are just energetically expensive. Protect your core. Let the construction site remain a mess while you finish your skyscraper in the silence. This leads us to the fifth trait, the one that explains why your very presence triggers insecurity in others. We call this the apex paradox. It is the psychological weight of absolute autonomy. Most people are tethered to one another by a web of mutual need and emotional scaffolding. They require constant reassurance. They need a witness to their existence to feel real. You do not. You move through the world with a terrifying level of self-sufficiency that most find incomprehensible. The apex paradox is simple. The more you realize you don't need anyone, the more people become desperate to find a reason why you do. Your independence is a quiet threat to their entire survival strategy. When you walk into a room and you aren't looking for approval, when you aren't scanning the crowd for a place to fit in, you are inadvertently holding up a mirror to their own dependency. They look at your stillness and they don't see peace. They see an absence of a leash, and it scares them. In nature, the lone wolf is not the weakest of the pack. It is often the one strong enough to thrive without the pack's protection. This creates an invisible pressure. People can feel that you are not for sale. They can sense that they have no leverage over you. You don't beg to be understood. You don't ask for permission. You simply are. This lack of need is often misinterpreted as arrogance or coldness. It is neither. It is simply the heavy silence of a king in exile who has already built his own kingdom. They will try to break your solitude. They will try to pull you back into the herd with guilt or concern. They want you to be as vulnerable as they are because your strength makes their weakness visible. But remember, It is much safer to be respected for your distance than to be accepted for your submission. If your presence makes them feel small, it is not because you are looking down on them. It is because you are standing on a peak they are too afraid to climb. You aren't being distant. You are just untouchable. Embrace the paradox. Being the predator of false social structures is your birthright. Trait 6. Immune to manipulation. Most people are tragically easy to play. They are desperate for the sugar high of a hollow compliment and terrified of the social death that comes with being the target of drama. They are puppets. Their strings are pulled by the need for belonging and the fear of exclusion. But you have cut the strings. You are an anomaly in a world of psychological soft targets. The herd is susceptible to the poison of inauthenticity. They accept false flattery because it sedates their insecurity. They participate in drama because it gives their small lives a flicker of borrowed meaning. You, however, have developed a cognitive immunity. When a manipulator approaches you with practiced charm, you don't feel flattered. You feel a cold, clinical curiosity. You see the machinery behind the smile. You analyze the hidden ask buried in the praise. They are trying to install a program of debt in your psyche, and your firewall just blocked the entry. It is exhausting to watch the world fall for the same tired tricks. You see the gaslighting, the guilt-tripping, and the subtle power plays that define modern social dynamics. While they are busy defending their innocence or begging for a seat at the table, you have already left the room. You refuse to provide the emotional reactions that manipulators feed on. You realize that your attention is a high-value currency, and you refuse to spend it on low-value actors. This level of defense makes you dangerous. Manipulators rely on the victim's need to be understood. They rely on the part of you that wants to explain yourself. But when you use silence as a weapon of mass destruction against their ego, they lose their power. You don't argue. You don't defend. You simply observe. You have killed the need for permission from people who aren't even qualified to judge themselves. They call you difficult. They call you stuck up. In reality, you are just unreachable. You aren't lonely. You are just incapable of being lied to. Trait 7. Radical independence. This is the final threshold, the point where the common man turns back and the elite spirit pushes forward into the dark. Most people are governed by a hidden, desperate terror of being the other. They will compromise their morals, dilute their personality, and betray their own potential just to avoid the sting of social rejection. They are terrified of walking alone. You are not. You have realized that the approval of the herd is not a reward, it is a cage. Radical independence is the absolute willingness to be the villain in someone else's story if the cost of being the hero is your own soul. The average person needs the crowd to tell them they are good, they are right, and they are safe. You have killed that need. You have stopped seeking permission to exist. When the crowd moves left and your internal compass points right, you walk right without a second thought. You don't explain. You don't defend. You don't look back to see if they are following. This level of autonomy is offensive to a society built on codependency. They will call you eccentric. They will label you arrogant or difficult. They might even treat you as an enemy because your very existence proves that their social tethers are optional. They hate that they can't control you with the threat of isolation. But here is the secret. They are too weak to handle. Solitude is not a punishment for the rare individual. It is a fortress. You would rather be alone with your integrity than surrounded by people who require you to lie to yourself. You understand that the price of greatness is the loss of the mediocre. While they are busy begging to be understood, you are busy becoming untouchable. You have embraced the silence, the cold, and the distance, because that is where the real work happens. You aren't antisocial. You are just finished with the theater of the small-minded. Let them whisper. Let them judge. Let them tell their stories about how strange you've become. Their judgment is the noise of the construction site. Your silence is the completion of the skyscraper. You have outgrown the need for a tribe that demands your submission as the price of entry. In this world of desperate conformists, your refusal to bend is your greatest power. Stand your ground. Being the villain in a loser's story is a compliment. So, what is the solution? Understanding these traits is merely the diagnosis. To survive and thrive in a society that is fundamentally designed to drain you, you need a protocol. You need a strategy that transforms your isolation from a burden into a surgical tool for success. Step 1. Radical acceptance. Stop trying to fix your social life. Stop apologizing for the silence. Society operates on a desperate, collective delusion that more is better. More friends, more connections, more noise. Radical acceptance means looking at the cold, hard data of your life and realizing that you are not missing out. You are filtering. Accept that you are a high-performance engine that cannot run on the low-grade fuel of superficiality. Once you kill the desire to be understood by the average person, you become dangerous. You become untouchable. You are no longer a victim of loneliness. You are a curator of your own reality. Step 2. Signal strategy. You are a deep-sea diver, but even at the bottom of the ocean, you need a tether to something real. However, searching for friends in the herd is a waste of energy. Instead, you must broadcast a frequency. Most people mask their depth to fit in. You must do the opposite. Speak your truth with zero dilution. Drop the philosophical bomb in the middle of a mundane dinner party. Display your radical independence in the office. This will act as a repellent for the weak and the fraudulent, but it functions as a beacon for the few individuals who operate on your level. You don't find your tribe. You signal until they find you. Step 3. The mask of sanity. This is the most critical tactical maneuver. While you refuse to betray your core, you must understand that the modern world, especially the economic landscape, is built on social theater. Total honesty with the herd is often tactical suicide. You need a mask, not a mask to hide your insecurity, but a mask of sanity to navigate the construction site. At work, in business, or in networking, you must learn to mirror the normal just enough to achieve your objectives. Smile, make the small talk, play the part, but never forget that it is a performance. The moment the transaction is complete, you return to your fortress. You use the herd's own rules to extract what you need, money, status, or resources, without ever letting them touch your soul. This protocol is not for the fragile. It requires you to kill the part of you that begs for permission. It requires you to be comfortable with being the villain in a loser's story. But if you can master these 3 steps, you move from being a social outcast to an architect of your own power. You aren't just surviving the herd, you are colonizing it. Be warned, once you adopt this mindset, there is no going back to the warmth of the herd. But then again, a tiger never missed the warmth of the sheep. Let's go further. The pattern is now complete. Look at the mirror you have created. The lie detector, the depth addict, the mirror of truth, the nuclear engine, the apex paradox, the manipulator's nightmare, and the radically independent soul. When you fuse these 7 traits together, you don't just get a loner. You create a king in exile, a sovereign mind that no longer requires the validation of the herd to justify its existence. You have stepped out of the construction site and into the skyscraper of your own making. But be warned, this is only the beginning. Solitude is the forge, but the steel you are tempering will be tested in ways the average mind cannot conceive. There are things waiting for you in the dark, deep psychological currents and traps of power that I haven't even mentioned yet. Most people who reach this level of clarity eventually break because they lack the final architectural blueprints to handle the weight of their own truth. If you are just a casual observer, subscribe and stay on the surface. We will continue to peel back the layers of the human psyche here. But if you recognize yourself in these words, if you know you are meant for the deep ocean and not the wading pool, then you require more than just public videos. You need the uncensored protocols. You need the dark psychology that the algorithms are desperate to hide. Click the join button. Gain access to the architect level. This is not for everyone. It is a filter. It is a paywall designed to separate the curious from the committed. Inside, we discuss the secrets that are too dangerous for the masses, to the strategies used by the elite to dominate social entropy and turn their isolation into an absolute empire. The choice is yours. Remain a ghost in the crowd or become an architect of the void. Subscribe if you haven't. But if you want what's hidden, click join. I'll see you in the dark.